Put a smile on your face when you're moving from place to place.
Viewers, welcome back to Youth Wednesdays on Tobago Updates. If you were with us earlier this morning, seeing Dwayne and I introduce you into the show, you'd see that we are very much thankful to be in a new year. It is 2025, and of course we are grateful. This morning I'm joined in studio with two, I should say, handsome gentlemen who are here to just, reignite your memory on what exactly you should be doing during non-fire seasons and fire seasons. It's something that it needs to be, regurgitated so that the public is very much aware. And here to bring you that information this morning is Mr. Darren Henry. He's the Assistant Conservator of Forests, Department of Natural Resources and Forestry. Good morning to you, Mr. Henry.
Good morning.
And with me, I'm also joined with firefighter Norris Phillips of the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service. Good morning to you, firefighter Phillips.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right, so you see bright smiles on their faces this morning. They're very much excited to bring you this information. So the name of the initiative that was brought across some years back is Think Twice Before You Ignite. So for the young people, as I said, it's Youth Wednesdays, who may be joining and they might not have heard of this initiative. What is Think Twice Before You Ignite?
So basically, we are in the fire season. Even though we are having our relatively wet fire season in Trinidad and Tobago is from the 1st of December to the 30th of June. Mm-hmm. And that is a period where we have two seasons, wet and dry. And that is a period where we have a lot of bushfires. So we thought it fit through the Division of Food Security, Natural Resources, the Environment and Sustainable Development, along with the BioReach project coming out of the Environmental Management Authority. We decided to get together. We need to get our act together in terms of educating the populace on fires and the challenges and the dangers that fires could pose. So we decided to come up with a slogan, think twice before you ignite, because fires have severe consequences, both financially, ecologically, and to person's health on the island.
I think what you're saying, well, I'm not thinking, but I know what you're saying is very much true. In recent times, we've seen what fires can do, the destruction that fires can cause. All right. So what are the objectives? What are the goals of Think Twice Before You Ignite?
So basically, we want to encourage, well, we would have partnered, obviously, our partner here, the TTFS, Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service, some other NGOs, some other divisions, Division Agriculture and other NGOs in Tobago. All of us, there's a body, a stakeholder group that we really want to push the importance of following the regulations pertaining to lighting fires in the dry season. As Mr. Phillips will give you more information, all outside fires during the dry, from December 1st to June 30th is basically illegal.
Right, and you're mentioning the legality or the illegal basis of having a fire lit within this period. That was a tongue twister there. Dwayne, I join you on the tongue twisters this morning, right? What are the charges that a person would face should they light a fire between December 1st to June 30th?
Right, so based on the Agricultural Fires Act, Chapter 6302, on summary conviction, if you had been found guilty for lighting fires during that period, the fine would have since changed from $1,500 to $20,000 and 6 months imprisonment.
That is a jump. 1,500 to 20 grand.
Yes, and it is needed because one, you have to look at the fact that we have only so much resources that we could use or utilize during that period, as well as manpower. As skilled as the firefighting crews per shift will be, we are still somewhat limited. That is one. Two, you have to look at the costs that this would incur. Not just because that you would have a certain amount of fires and you'd see the trucks moving back and forth during that period. Many persons may not know or understand what costs would be incurred. You have to look at the fact that utilizing water that would have been treated by the Water and Sewage Authority. Just last year, we would have reached let's say, just under 1 million liters, which would have given us an approximate cost of 1.7 million just for the water alone. You're not looking at the cost for appliances and the personal protective equipment, the vehicles that would have been used, not just the appliances, but all the other factors that would have come into play. We only just mentioned just the water. So there's also the fact that damage to property and loss of life is possible as well. So you need to make that as clear as possible. Many a time it would be better for us to come hard like this, enforce the law, so it would be easier on everybody else in the long run. So,
I think I'm speaking on my interest and the viewers' interest as well. In terms of the types of fires that you all would be charging for, what types of fires would the person be? Let's say there's as opposed to a forest fire or a civilian lighting a fire, what would happen there?
right. So as my comrade would have said, all outdoor fires in this period from the 1st of December to the last day in June will be legal, all outdoor fires. So you could consider you're cleaning your yard and you're burning stuff in that regard. Yes, it would be considered illegal. To as far as you having an event where you may have a bonfire without the permit that is supposed to be provided, it would also be considered illegal. Something that persons may not look at. You have the fact that we are a liming community, we are a liming country. So persons tend to like to have, let's say, a river lime. That especially is illegal because you are not supposed to have any type of burning done within 1/4 mile of any rainforest. And most times, if you are liming at a river, especially in Tobago, you are at a borderline or in the rainforest carrying out said lime. So those would also be considered illegal. Once it is outdoors, if you don't remember what I would have said before, consider it illegal without the permit, that is.
Okay, so for residents, I mean, they might not be nosy per se, but they're looking out for what I should say, the other citizens in the country and in the village, you know. Should a neighbor see another neighbor lighting a fire?
Right.
What is the process that we have to take to report this?
So,
Right.
talk to your neighbor. Tell your neighbor, hey, your smoke affecting me. Have you ever hung your clothes outside?
Yeah,
and then when you
my
come back, all
towels
the
had a
clothes
smell
smelling
like-
of smoke. People have asthma. All those kind of things. Sometimes the embers could move from neighbor, jump on a property and create and cause fire, even burn down house. My colleague here probably will tell you about the stats in terms of how many fires per year we have in Tobago.
Okay.
And all those kind of things, because it's very expensive and it's dangerous because you light a fire. Fire, for what a local was, fire get away, as you say in Tobago. Burn the hillside. Think about all the animals that die, all the trees that burn, the smoking, the carbon releasing in the atmosphere. When the rainy season comes, it's erosion, it's siltation.
Correct, yes.
You talk about flooding. Everything is linked. Everything is a circle, a cycle. Everything is interlinked. And then fire officers, foresters have to go out and risk their lives with TEMA in flooding, which was created by the fires that burn in the dry season. And all those monies that are being spent could be used for more productive use, whether it's education in the health sector. So everything is linked. So we're trying to best to see how we could educate the populace on fires and the impacts of fires on the environment, especially we are a tourism destination. And in the dry season, Tobago, the southwest side of Tobago is basically charred, black in terms of all the hillsides, and everybody lighting bushfires. For what reason, we don't know. We know there are pyromaniacs out here who actually are fire starters in the Dallaford area, Spring Garden Union area. But I realized that we realized that Dallaford wouldn't reduce, the person probably would have passed away. So we have those people flushing out game animals, people burning places to encourage grass to grow so they can get feed for animals, and also you have bad shifting agricultural practices.
Okay.
So it's a plethora of issues that we have to deal with, and people just taking this thing for granted, but it's an expensive, it's expensive on the government. Money that could be put into other productive use.
So I would like to add as well, keep in mind that this is covered by law. So you could speak to your neighbor, as you have mentioned before, but if that doesn't work, you could simply go to the nearest police station, pass information on, and they will then follow through. You see, what the police would be looking for when they would have come to the area would be a series of things. When you are doing any type of lighting within that period, you are supposed to have a fire permit that would have been granted by the fire guardians that would have been in that particular area. So, to explain fire guardians for you, you have just about 20 guardians that will be spaced throughout the island, from Charleville right down. So, what you are supposed to do is you're gonna contact either Roxborough Fire Station, Scarborough Fire Station, and find the guardian for that particular area. You will get or give the information to them in terms of where you are, what your purpose is or purpose of burning is. You would make an appointment with them, which would be within the periods of 8 to 4, and they will come assess the area and give you the do's and don'ts in terms of how you're going to go about burning in that particular area. If you could burn, it all depends on what you have to burn. We understand that plastics will be a no-no, and cowage in that particular area. Sponges as well. They are carcinogenic, so we would not allow those to be burnt. Right, so what is going to happen next? They will do up the necessary paperwork that they will have on file. The receipt that would be produced, which would come at a cost of $10 to the person, will come back to the persons that had to burn. They would then give you instructions in terms of when to burn, which would be between the hours of 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. This would be because you would tend to have persons at home in that regard, and wind currents would tend to be lower during that time of day. So you will then go ahead and burn at that time. Now, many a time, you may have miserable neighbors for whatever reason. We understand that. But if that is the case and you have to pass information on, if you have miserable neighbors, you will then be covered because you have been following the law. You are also supposed to let your neighbors know when you're going to burn. So persons will be able to put things in place for their property as well. Even though the guidance would guide you in terms of how to burn to protect not just your own, but the properties of the neighbors as well. Right? So when the police comes, if they do have to come, they will then check to see if you have the permits. If you don't, they will either guide you or the necessary steps would then be taken along the Agricultural Fires Act to put things in place as it should be. So that is the next step. If you have neighbors, miserable neighbors that burn and they would have not had the permit, that would be corrected. If you are the miserable neighbor, or let's say you didn't know that they had the permits, then the information will be brought forth and that could be corrected.
You know, that was actually going to be my next question. What if I have a miserable neighbor who does not want to adhere to the rules of the land, the laws of the land, or they don't want to listen to me in conversation about how they should go about lighting fires or how they should not? You know, so I thank you very much for that information. I think a lot of viewers would have appreciated that answer that you gave. All right. So you said that a lot of people may not be aware of how to attain fire permits and these things. How would you all be going about bringing public awareness to this initiative and to getting fire permits?
Right. So this is where the fire prevention section normally comes into play. We would have been constantly be doing outreach programs, especially not just during the fire prevention season, but throughout the year, be it dry season or rainy season. Information would be brought forth constantly. What we do let persons know is that you are to, one, contact the station via the contact numbers that we have available. We have 639-1000 for Scarborough, 660-4369 for Roxborough. If you don't remember those numbers, you have 990 that you could use. You have 211 as well, right? And they will then guide you in terms of where you are, where you live. They will pass the information for the respective guardian to that point for you So you would then follow the steps of the guardian from then on. But the information would have been brought forth constantly over the years. Right? So we know that persons come, persons go. The information may not reach everybody all at once. As a result, we are constantly reaching out to persons to pass this information on to them. So this is as simple as it gets. And from then on, when you make that connection with the guardian, they will guide you through the entire process, which is a lot simpler than it looks. Right?
Right. So, as you can see, we've been discussing a lot about why you should not light those fires. When we come back from a small break, we'll be discussing what exactly happens when you do light those fires and how much damage it could cause from the firefighter's perspective and, of course, the forestry perspective. We have both individuals here ready to speak to you on these topics. So, before I go, I just want to encourage you all to share the live, share the live, share the live. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Youth Wednesdays on Tobago Updates. For those of you just joining us, we are joined here in studio with Mr. Darren Henry and firefighter Norris Phillips, who are educating us on what we should and should not do during the fire and non-fire seasons. Now, we were just speaking about why you should not light those fires, but we know that people can be stubborn, and there are certain agencies that may see the need to having to light those fires. So now we're going to talk about the impact of lighting those fires on the environment and, of course, the fire service, because a few factors were mentioned, such as the fire service having to spread wide and thin to control these fires and to control what it does to the environment. So, to Mr. Darren, what exactly happens to the environment should a fire be lit in that specific area? How does it affect the environment?
So fires affect the environment in several ways. We talk about the loss of timber or loss of material for building houses, loss of habitats for wildlife. We talk about loss of soil water, loss of soil nutrients, because fires absorb all the nutrients in the soil and then they leave potash basically in the soil. You're talking about the burrowing animals that will die. The invertebrates that help to keep the soil aerated will die. All the lizards, you have snakes trying to escape, birds, young fledglings, a lot of death to wildlife.
Right.
And we know how important that is, and also the challenge is when as soon as the dry season ends and then we have the rainy season coming, some of the areas are not fully rehabilitated or revegetated on its own before the rain season comes in.
Right.
And then you have another challenge. You have landslides, you have erosion, you have flooding, you have siltation, and Tobago is a fishing community, and you have turbidity of the water, which affects the marine space, which will be linked to tourism, which will link to our livelihoods here. So it's a whole, it is a whole cycle. And then it's expensive. It's very expensive to get TEMA, fire service, police to clean up when Scarborough floods. All the businesses shut down. People are home. People losing businesses, a whole link. We have tourists who come to the beach just for sunshine and see the cargo on the beach.
Right.
You have people go to the forest, you can't go because the place charged. And people would have tried that also with this whole advent of climate change. It's working for us now because we're having a wet dry season thus far. But we know it will get dry out and people begin to light fires. In the past 12 years, persons would have lit fires in the forest reserve. We lost just over an acre on a hillside. The bracken ferns underneath it have a lot of dead leaves and it burned. And even though that is the wettest part of the island, that's still burned because we don't know how climate change is going to impact us. And we're talking about even the carbon that is being released. Normally carbon, when the trees die, they release carbon whether into the soil or atmosphere during the decaying process very slowly. Now you have a sudden increase and that creating problems atmospherically for us. And we're talking about persons who are affected by asthma and ailments and all those kind of things.
Okay, and so we know that there are certain agencies, I don't want to get into the names and who they are. All right, but we know that there are certain agencies who do see the need to have fires lit to get rid of the garbage collected, etc., etc. How do you all plan on going forward in terms of speaking to them, in terms of making a compromise, because they have to get rid of the garbage that they collect?
So we would have identified some of the agencies which are government run, and we plan to meet with them, have a chat with them. Composting is a thing that could be done to reduce some of those agencies doing their burning, composting to produce material for gardening, mulch, etc. And that is one way. We could also look at, in some areas, look at recycling. Mr. Philip mentioned they don't issue permits for sponges and plastic because the smoke carries is carcinogenic, cancer causing. And so we need to meet with them and have a chat, a discussion with them and see how best we could have them change their strategies, change their ways going forward, because a lot of the material could be composted.
Right.
A lot of the plant material could be composted, and we have no major composting facilities on the island. So that could be a project for some private entrepreneur to come up with, and hopefully in the next year or so that this whole plastic recycling bill in Parliament could be passed, so that people could, you could get a few cents for bottles, just like the glass bottles, get a few cents to pick up plastic, which will reduce the amount of plastic in the environment. For sponges, I'm not too sure about how we're going to treat with the sponges, but I guess basically the landfill would be able to treat with that.
Okay.
And we also even enjoy, sometimes you might have people even lighting fires up there,
right,
in the landfill. And my Mr. Philip might be able to tell you about bushfires and probably challenges with people, private domestic homes, and bushfires burning down homes in Tobago over the last 10 years. It has happened. And all those things, and people just light fires and they go on, because I accustomed burning that. So my grandfather used to burn that every year. My mother used to burn that every year. My father used to burn that every year. So they just continue to do it. So we're trying to make a change, not force, but we're trying to educate the populace to have a change in their behavior, because it's costing us.
Yes.
It's costing the government
a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Yes.
Mr. Philip mentioned approximate how much money WASA would
had to give out in water
and
only.
they just go and use that to out fires, which could have been diverted somewhere else.
And this is from the forestry's perspective. And as you said, Mr. Phillips had mentioned what exactly happens when the fire service is discharged in order to tame the fires or put them out. What exactly do you all face in terms of that?
Right. So even though we are quite efficient as a team in the fire service, we know that we have quite the skilled crew that would tend to be responding. Doesn't matter the shift, they are quite skilled. It must be noted, and I don't think it's much of a secret, that we are short on vehicles and equipment. We're working on that as much as we can behind the scenes, but as it stands, this is what we are facing for now. So you have to look at, one, the topography of Tobago. It all depends on where the fire is. We may have to respond to suits. And you have to keep in mind, as skilled as you are, the driving styles of each driver would tend to be different from the other, which would then take a toll on the vehicles that we have to use. So servicing or maintaining the vehicles would be one. These are not normal vehicles. You're dealing with stuff like Rosenbauer, which are quite expensive, right? So we have that for one. We also have the fact that we have quite unusual types of equipment. We're not talking just about the BA sets, because obviously you must have ambient air to effect proper firefighting, to also secure and maintain your own life on a fire scene, because it's preservation of life, limb, property in that order, which also includes your own. The average BA set starts at a minimum of $40,000. You still have to outfit all the vehicles, not just those at Scarborough or Roxborough, but also Crum Point, but we're going to deal with just those for now. You have from your pumps to your generators, which should be constantly used. They are mechanical. As you do, there will be wear and tear. Based on where they are, you then have to carry the equipment from point A to point B, which would be quite tedious. Hence the reason why the training is as difficult as it is. You must be able to manhandle the equipment. Now, we're just talking about equipment here. Let's move away from that and go to the simple fact that we have 2 fire stations. Even though there are 3 on the island, you have 2 that would readily respond to a fire scene across the island. So you have Scarborough and Roxborough. Roxborough would go obviously as far as Charlotteville, as low down as Goodwood before you go to Shangy Hill. And they would go as far north as in between Castara to Palatavia area. Scarborough would then cover everything else. So you have to be mindful of where the vehicles are at that point in time when they are going to respond. So let's say you're dealing with Roxborough for now, and there is a bushfire, let's say in Goodwood, the Big Hole area. You're right at the edge of the station ground for Goodwood, and then you get a call, let's say Lansformy or Charlotteville. Now, that is one of the challenges. It would then take time to get from point A to point B. We don't want to get into the mechanics or the way in which the trucks would have to maneuver the topography to get from point A to point B to respond, which would not be like that of a regular vehicle. It will take time. And a fire would spread 10 times the size per second. Now you're adding a lot of flammable material that we would consider class A in terms of bushfires, or it could even be a house fire, right? Now, you also have as well, in these areas, the way Tobago is situated, the way how things are, you would tend to have, like, let's say, houses nestled among the trees. If it's a scenario like that, you then have where radiated heat as well as direct heat, direct burning could then affect the houses that would be in or around those areas. You also have the simple fact that we would normally call it, it's not really the correct term, but we would call it a free radical, where you would have embers traveling from point A to point B on the wind or wind direction to land on property, which could then cause a lot of money or full or total loss of the property that could be affected. And when you're looking at that, you have to pay attention or keep in mind that you could have lost a life, limb, or property as well. And we understand the whole act of property, but in this case, we're talking about the persons that could be lost in those or in that regard. So in a nutshell, that's some of the things that we tend to look at. Now, everything that we do, we are geared towards rescuing life across the board. So we tend to look at that. Now, fortunately, even though we would have had just over 400 bushfire calls last year, fortunately, we wouldn't have had loss of life, but it could happen.
Yes.
And that is what we're trying to avoid. Even though we have 116 square miles spaced out, it all depends on what we are doing at the point in time. We don't necessarily have to be in station. Even though it may seem that way, it is highly unlikely that the trucks would tend to be in, especially in the peak of the bushfire season. We would most likely be out. Many a time you respond on the outside, or the shift changes on the outside, on the go. The vehicles are very rarely inside, which then creates a problem when you hear you have to service them, because how you're going to service and attack fires at the same time? It creates quite the problem, quite the challenge. So if we could cut down on the amount of bushfires that we face, as even if it's down to 15, 20, we're going to take that.
Okay.
It helps.
All right. So, that's a lot of information to soak in. But I think the basis of the information is to think twice before you ignite. And that is running from between December 1st to June 30th. That is for our dry season. And according to these lovely young men here this morning, even though we are having a wet, dry season, it is still possible for that to happen, especially when people are lighting fires in their homes. So be reminded, public, that you must think twice before you ignite. And if you have that nosy neighbor, that very miserable neighbor, please contact the fire service at 990 or 211 or 639-1000 at the Scarborough station. What was the number for Roxborough?
660-4369.
All right. Thank you so much, Firefighter Norris Phillips and Mr. Darren Henry of the Department of Natural Resources and Forestry. We have one more thing from Mr. Henry.
Yeah, just to mention, this is the beginning of our promotion in terms of environmental education, and we have through the Barreach EMA and the division, we are having a wildfire expert coming next week, Monday and Tuesday, to do some additional training along with the fire service and all of the division stakeholders. So we have a fire expert coming who was part of the Nature Conservancy in Florida. At one time he's now with a consultant with the FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization. So he will be coming in to give us some more ideas and in terms of how we could best treat with the bushfires on the island, etc. So that is something we're looking forward to, and from then we will be continuing our educational program and also our enforcement program regarding the whole bushfire scenario that is in Tobago.
And of course, this is part of the initiative to alert the public on what they should or should not do during this season. All right, so we already see some of the efforts being put forward to notify the public. Right, so thank you once again, gentlemen, for being with us here on Youth Wednesdays on Tobago Updates, especially to educate our public on fires and what damages fires can do to us. All right, viewers, before we go, I just want to tell you what is coming up next. You may be excited for our next interview. For those supporting and for those who may not know, we have Carlette Groom Matthew, a Trinidad and Tobago Police Service social worker, who will be coming to speak to us on TTPS, Tobago Division and Tobago Football Association. So we are happy, we are excited to hear more about this football clinic. So we ask you to stay tuned and share the live, share the live, share the live. We'll be right back.